It is good to be back with you. Anytime I go to speak someplace else, and I do get asked to do gospel meetings, and I do travel because of Bible talk, and I will always hate being away from here every time. I assure you, I would rather be here than any place else. But it is necessary I do these trips for the kingdom. I have to think about what's best for the kingdom, and I have some connection that nobody else has. My connection with Bible Talk, I'm the church relations representative. And people need to hear about that ministry. And then there's some things that I just know about that I get asked to speak about. But my heart will always be here. It was a very productive trip. Because it's been so long since I've traveled, I overdid it. I squeezed way too much into one trip. I spoke to 5 congregations in 9 days. And first of all, on Saturday, I woke up to 24-degree weather and snow on the ground. And I brought my Crocs and windbreaker, and that wasn't gonna cut it. I had 2 light pair of pants, and I was trying to decide which pair to wear because both of them were pretty thin. I wore them both. It was just that kind of a day. But Sunday was a great day. I spoke at one church Wednesday, another one Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday I did a gospel meeting, 3-day gospel meeting, 6 lessons. It was very productive. During the gospel meeting, we did baptize 2. It's the smallest gospel meeting I've ever done, by the way. We had 12 people at the gospel meeting. We baptized 2. So percentage-wise, we did pretty well, you know. And I got to baptize a lady that I'd known years ago. I actually did her husband's funeral and got a chance to baptize her. So that was pretty special. It was a great trip. That evening, I got to go over to Pueblo. I spoke at a congregation that's already supporting Bible Talk. I try to go back once a year just to update them on what we're doing, what's new. And then I went to Garden City on the way back. And I got there. First of all, I stopped and grabbed some lunch, and at the restaurant, my pickup got hailed on. So I waited till the hail quit and then drove over to the church building, and it got hailed on again. And because of the hail, after we were all set up and I had my table and everything going, they sent out a text saying we decided to cancel the Wednesday night Bible class. And so I had 5 people there. So it was small numbers, but still was a very productive trip, and I loved it very much. I got to do a lot of writing done. I'm going to rewrite the essence of Revelation because on Wednesday night, starting not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, we will be having a class on the essence of Revelation. And if you don't have 5 of these, grab 5 on the way out and invite 5 of your friends. I mentioned this to Robert. I said, make sure they grab 5 of these. Well, he told you to grab 5 of the flyers, which is fine. We can put those out too. But these are really handy because they fit in your pocket, they fit in your purse, and you come across somebody and say, hey, come to our class. And so wouldn't it be great if this room was just packed to come hear about the book of Revelation? People are fascinated about Revelation. We don't speak about it much in the church, and we should, because there's things that you get only from the book of Revelation that you don't get anywhere else. I mean, you get some ideas, but Revelation, more than any other book, will show you how much God loves his church. He just loves the church. And the Roman Empire messed with the church. And Jesus says, are you kidding me? You're going to mess with my church? This is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And he goes through the seals and the trumpets and the bowls, and just, it's so neat once you figure out what all that is saying, how it all unfolds, and you'll see, wow, God really does love his church. So hope that you will be here for that. Inside the bulletin is an outline of the sermon. And if you'll open that up, the title should match what's on the screen here, Encouragers and Discouragers. The other one is for this evening. I hope you'll be here for that. But we're going to be studying and learning about Nehemiah. Nehemiah is my favorite Old Testament book. Revelation is probably my favorite New Testament book. But I love Nehemiah. because Nehemiah is a man who accomplished so much in a very short period of time. I'll give you just a little bit of history. It was 586 BC when the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem. And what was typical back in those days is there were really no atheists back in biblical times. Everybody believed in a God of some kind. And the Babylonians believed that if they conquered you, that's because their gods were stronger than your gods. And so they did like all the nations did. They tore down your temple. They killed your priests. They made sure your religion is annihilated. And then they hauled off a bunch of people and trained them in their ways. And that's exactly what Babylon did. But something very strange happened in 516 BC. Well, no, earlier than that, actually. It was in 539 BC is when the Medes and the Persians combined, the Medo-Persians, and they conquered Babylon. They conquered the Babylonians. And rather than tear down all the gods, they talked to the people and said, "Where are you from?" Well, the Jews said, "Well, we're from Jerusalem." Says, "Well, my God told, or your God told me that you should go back to Jerusalem. I want you to build the temple." It's like, huh? Kings don't act like this. But that's what Cyrus did. And you can read about this in Ezra chapter 1, where he says, "I want you to go. In fact, I'll help you. And all you Jews who want to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild your temple, go ahead and do that." That just didn't happen. He's the weird king, okay? He's not the typical king. And all of them were like that. Darius after him, and Xerxes and Artaxerxes, all of those Medo-Persian kings were supportive of the Israelites going back and rebuilding. But something happened with the neighboring nations. And so when Zerubbabel is up here on your screen, when he rebuilt the temple in 516, he went to rebuild the walls. But the neighboring countrymen objected, and they wrote a letter to Xerxes and also to Artaxerxes, and we'll talk about them. Xerxes is the dad, Artaxerxes is the son, and said, if you let them rebuild this, if you let them rebuild Jerusalem, look up in your books, Jerusalem has always been rebellious against the kings, and they said all these nasty things about him. Well, Artaxerxes shut it down. He says, don't rebuild the walls. And so they didn't. For many decades, nearly 100 years, they didn't rebuild the walls. So Nehemiah, every time somebody would come back from Jerusalem, because he's in Persia, he says, how's things going there in Jerusalem? And they'd say, it's not good. It's not good. The walls are still broken down. They're burned with fire. The people are not really following like they should. And in chapter 1, he just broke down and wept. He wept and he mourned and he fasted for 4 months before he did something. Finish up your notes here. King Xerxes reigned from 486 to 465 BC. That was during the time of Esther. The books of the Old Testament are not in chronological order. If they were, Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah, they would be closer to the end, because that's the time period that it covers. Artaxerxes reigned from 464 to 424 BC. And so we know that the book of Nehemiah started in 444 BC. If you look at chapter 1, just glance back at Nehemiah chapter 1. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah, it happened in the month of Kislev in the 20th year while I was in Susa, the capital. So whenever before Christ, the way dating was done was how many years since the reigning king started his reign. That's how they didn't say, 516 BC, because they didn't know what BC was. So they had to go by the reigning king. And so we're told this is the 20th year. It would have been the 20th year of Artaxerxes. And I showed you he started in 464 BC, so 20 years later, before 44 BC. And then this is a picture of the Jewish calendar. Jewish calendar a little different than us. Nisan was the first month, and it started in the spring, not in the dead of winter, and went from there. And so the 9th month would have been Kislev, and I amplified it up there in the corner so you could see Kislev. Kislev was about November, December. So that's when he heard about it. But then 4 months later in chapter 2 there, verse 1, and it came about in the month of Nisan. So that would be the first month. So about 4 months He fasted, he prayed before he went before the king, and he asked the king if he could go back to the city of his fathers. He never mentions the word Jerusalem. Read the text. Artaxerxes was a very smart man. Nehemiah was a smart man. They knew they were talking about Jerusalem, but he's very careful not to mention the city. Sometimes learning to say the right thing is a very valuable thing to do as a leader. And he knew if he mentioned Jerusalem, that would be, oh, Jerusalem. Well, we heard about Jerusalem. He never does that. He says, can I go back and rebuild the city where my fathers are buried? That's the way he worded it. Very intelligent. Chapter 3 is where they rebuild the wall, and I wish I had time to study that with you, maybe another time, but that's where it says this person worked, and next to him, and next to him, and next to him. It starts with the priest. The priest roll up their sleeves, says, hand me some stones, and I'll get started on this thing. Blue collar, white collar, didn't matter. Men, women, everybody helped rebuild the wall. But there was opposition to building the wall. And that's the first point that we want to make. Every great work faces discouragers. I challenge you to find in all of history, secular or religious, find a great work that didn't face discouragers. Find a great work where they didn't face opposition. Anytime you're going to do something great, if we're going to do something great here in Gore at the Lake Road Church of Christ, we are going to face opposition. Just get ready for it. It's going to happen. And so we see that things were just fine. They were peaceful until progress was being made. They were fine with talking about rebuilding the wall. They were talking about all the great things. Yeah, we'll do these things. Just like Satan is fine with us talking about evangelism. We can talk about it all we want. When we start doing it, they say, whoa, wait a minute now. Don't be doing that stuff. You can talk about it, that's okay, but you start doing it, that's a different thing. So in your blank there, put progress, and look at Nehemiah chapter 4 with me in verse 1. Now it came about that when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became furious and very angry, and he mocked the Jews. He spoke in the presence of his brothers and the wealthy men of Samaria, and he said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Are they going to restore it for themselves? Can they offer sacrifices? Can they finish in a day? Can they revive the stones from the dusty rubble, even the burned ones? Now Tobiah the Ammonite, there's always a yes man, isn't there? Now Tobiah the Ammonite was near him, and he said, even what they're building, if a fox should jump on it, he would break their stone wall down. Things are fine until we get to chapter 3 and actually start building. Now there's opposition. Now they say, whoa, no, you can't be rebuilding the wall. We don't want you to do that. Nehemiah had rallied them. He got the right people in the right place, and they started building the wall. The enemy used insults to discourage the workers. They insulted them. What are you guys doing? You're going to offer sacrifices? You're going to finish this in a day? You're never going to get all this done. Look at those heaps of rubble there. The wall's all broken down. We're talking about a wall, and I'll show you a picture here in a moment. It was on that first screen. I don't know if you noticed. We believe we've actually found part of the wall that was built during Nehemiah's day. Can't hardly prove it. It's hard to date a wall, but it was taller than a house. And we know from reading later on in later chapters, it was wide enough several people could walk on top of it. This is a huge undertaking, and it goes all the way around the city. But if your city didn't have a wall around it, what good does it do to live in the city? The reason people live in the city is for protection. So if the wall's gone, you're not hardly a city. The wall is very important. Also, the wall was holy. That's why they dedicated it, because it's the holy city of Jerusalem. Not just the temple, the entire city was holy. And so the wall needed to be rebuilt. That needed to be restored. A good way to defeat discouragers is pray. Prayer is great. And that's what we see in verse 4. Hear, O our God, how we are despised. Return their reproach on their own heads, and give them up for plunder in a land of captivity. Do not forgive their iniquity, and let not their sin be blotted out before you, for they had demoralized the builders. So we built the wall, and the whole wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. Now when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, the Ashdodites heard that the repair of the walls in Jerusalem went on, and that the breaches began to be closed, they were very angry, and all of them conspired together to come and fight against them, against Jerusalem, and to cause a disturbance in it. Whenever Nehemiah faced the opposition, and they said, we're going to stop you. What did he do? He prayed. That's all he did. Isn't that silly? He just prayed. God, I don't have time for this riffraff. Would you take care of that? I got a wall to build. That was his attitude. I'm going to build a wall, right? If you just take care of these guys, I'm going to build a wall. His determination, his fervor was contagious, and pretty soon the people were catching on. The discouragers failed. Why? Because the builders had a mind to work. That's what verse 6 says. The wall was completed up to half its height. Why? Because the people had a mind to work. Let me ask you something, church. Do you have a mind to work? Do you have a heart to pray? And we can build. But you need a mind to work. You need a mind to work. God has called us together to do a work, not to warm pews. That's not what we're here about. We've gathered together to get the marching orders, to get our instructions, but then we need to go do it. Satan is perfectly fine with us talking about doing something great, but we need to start doing it. We need to have a mind to work. And it's everybody. Read chapter 3. I used to teach Revelation. I got Revelation on the brain. I've been writing about it. I used to teach Nehemiah. And the first couple of times I taught it, I skipped chapter 3. I thought, no, chapter 3 is the most important chapter, because that's where they actually do the work. And you read what they were. They were silversmiths. They were carpenters. They were bricklayers. They were white collar. They were blue collar. There were people there who were bankers, And men and women, everybody helped with the wall. Everybody did something on the wall. There's something for everybody to do in the church. Everybody, regardless of your age. And no, you're not too old. I was with some brothers one time, and we were talking, and one of the brothers says, you know what, I've been teaching class for 50 years. I think it's time for me to step down and let somebody else do it. And I've heard that so many times. And the other brother says, I got some advice for you. Don't die till you're dead. How's that for advice? He says, don't die till you're dead. You're still alive, aren't you? You can still teach. Teach. You can still do something. Do it. We're not too old. We're not too young. Nobody is too old or too young to do something in the kingdom. Have you got a mind to work? Have you got a heart to pray? God can do something, and the discouragers will fail if we are determined that we're going to do what's right. Discouragers. There are discouragers inside and outside. Nehemiah had to face that. We will have to face that. We had to be conscious of that. Workers, they were finally prepared to fight for a righteous cause. I remember they used to have these commercials, I'd rather fight than switch. Remember the old cigarette commercial? I'd rather fight than switch. Showed somebody with a black eye. I'd rather fight than switch. They were that determined. We're going to fight. Remember all these years, those walls had laid there in ruins and nobody did a thing about it. But now they're ready. You're going to threaten us? It don't matter. We're going to build the wall. You can threaten us all you want to. Before we get to that one, look at chapter 4 and verse 9. But we prayed to our God, and because of them we set up a guard against them day and night. Thus in Judah it was said, the strength of the burden bearers is failing. Yet there's much rubbish And we ourselves are unable to rebuild the wall. And our enemies said, they will not know or see until we come among them and kill them and put a stop to the work. Uh-oh, this is bad. Within, the workers say, oh, there's just so much, and we're getting tired. I don't know if we can do it. And the enemy is saying, we're going to get you. The workers were saying we can't, and the enemy is saying, yes, we can. This is a tough time. We have to be careful that a root of bitterness doesn't grow up among the ranks. There was a root of bitterness here. It says in verse 10, in Judah it was said. This isn't the outsiders. This is the people of God saying, this is just too much. We're not going to be able to do this. We need to be on our guard against those who are bitter. You know where root of bitterness comes from? Let me just put the scripture up here for you. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15 talks about a root of bitterness, that no root of bitterness spring up among you, causing trouble, and by it many be defiled. A root of bitterness. Sometimes that crops up in a church. I was part of a church. We had a problem with that. A root of bitterness came up, and he was poisoning the minds of several people. So, oh, we can't do this, and this is terrible, and this is bad, and it's really hard. When Paul was on the island, on the coast of Miletus, which is right there on the Aegean Sea, he sent for the elders who were in Ephesus, and they came down to him, and he talked with them in Acts chapter 20. And notice what he told them. He says, be on guard for yourselves and for all the flock among which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to shepherd the church of God, which he purchased with his own blood. I know that after my departure, savage wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. And from among your own selves, notice that, among your own selves men will arise, speaking perverse things to draw away the disciples after them. How did Paul know that? Well, Paul was a prophet. He wrote most of the books of the New Testament. He was definitely a prophet, but I don't think this was prophecy. I think this is years of experience. He just knew. He says, I've seen it before. I saw it in Galatia. I saw it in Macedonia. Same thing happens. He says, first of all, there's going to be savage wolves, and they're going to come and they're going to try to discourage you and try to get you to stop the work. Watch out for those outside, but then he says, watch out for those inside too. Among your own selves, there's going to be men who are going to rise who will try to draw away disciples after them. Foreign and domestic enemies. Watch out for those outside. Watch out for those inside. We're being warned about that. Then the enemy was gaining more and more confidence. We already talked about verse 11 where they said, we're going to come in, we're going to kill you, we're going to stop the work. Look at verse 12. When the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times, they will come up against us from every place where you may turn. They had to tell us that 10 times. Then I stationed men in the lowest part and in the space behind the wall and the exposed places, and I stationed the people in families with their swords, spears, and bows. Why did he station them in families? You think you'll fight a little harder if your wife and your kids are right next to you? I'll bet you will. He stationed them in their families for that reason. Verse 14. Then I saw their fear. Can you see fear? Is it possible? How many of you have ever ridden horses or been around horses? Can a horse tell if you're afraid? Oh, they know immediately. They know right away. Can you tell when somebody's afraid? Nehemiah says, I saw their fear. I saw it. I saw their fear. I rose and I spoke to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people. Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. And fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. The enemy was gaining confidence, and the workers needed encouragers. We need encouragers to remind us that God's hand is with us. We won't fail. What did Nehemiah say when he saw their fear? He says, don't you be afraid of them. Remember God. See, we get fearful when we think it's just us. I look around at this room and I think, good night. There's no way we're going to get anything done. Look at us. What a ragtag bunch, you know. But when I look at God and what God is able to do through ordinary people over and over and over again, He takes ordinary people. He does incredible things. Stop looking at us. Start looking at Him. And we need encouragers. We've got enough discouragers. I get discouraged in the world plenty, don't you? When we come here, we need encouragers. We need to encourage one another. This can be done. God can do amazing things through us if we will just let Him. C, let's talk about how encouragers address a problem. You know, when growing the kingdom actually becomes the top priority, the kingdom is going to grow. Read on with me in verse 15. When our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had frustrated their plan, then all of us returned to the wall, each one to his work. What does James 4, verse 7 say about what happens if you resist the devil? He'll flee from you. He's a coward. If you just stand up to him, just resist him, he'll flee from you. When you stand up to the enemy, they quit. What do? We went back to working on the wall. We returned to the wall, the whole house of Judah. Verse 16, from that day on, half my servants carried on the work, with half of them held the spears, the shields, the bows, and the breastplates, and the captains were behind the whole house of Judah. And those who were rebuilding the wall and those who carried burdens took their load with one hand doing the work and the other holding a weapon. As for the builders, each wore his sword girded up to his side as he built, while the trumpeter stood near me. I said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are separated on the wall, far from one another. At whatever place you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us. I need to read that again. Our God will fight for us. Do you see that? Our God will fight for us. When the kingdom, building up the kingdom, when that is the most important thing in our lives, the kingdom will grow. Matthew 6, verse 33 says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you as well. Seek first his kingdom, not seek first your job and then the kingdom, or seek first your family and then the kingdom, or seek first school or sports and then the kingdom. No, seek first the kingdom, and all these things will be added to you as well. We'll take care of that. Put the kingdom first and his righteousness. And righteousness just means doing what's right. By the way, there's the wall. That's a section of the real wall. We think that's the real wall that Nehemiah built. How'd you like to do that in 52 days? Did I mention that? 52 days. He got people rallied, and in 52 days they built that wall. That's incredible. Been sitting there for decades in ruin. In 52 days he got them organized. That's why I love Nehemiah. He's a leader. He inspired them. We need to seek first the kingdom. When that's the priority, then the kingdom will grow. Next, the workers worked with the assurance knowing someone had their back. Verse 16. It's nice when you know somebody's got your back, doesn't it? I don't have to worry about that. So-and-so's got my back. I can take care of this. While they were working, I mean, if they didn't set it up so somebody had the spears and the swords, and if you didn't know, if we get attacked, I'm going to come over, I'll have your breastplate for you, I'll have your shield, here's your sword. It's hard to do the work because you're working and you're looking around. And no, they could focus on the work. So-and-so's got my back. Somebody comes, they try to attack me. Somebody's got my back here. It is nice. Everybody in the church needs somebody who has their back. We all need that. We need to know there's somebody there who is with us, who has our back. Next, great ministries get the right people in the right places for ministry. I'm thankful for two things this morning. I'm first of all thankful I'm not God, and I'm thankful you're not God either. Because if you or I were God, we would not have sent a cupbearer to accomplish this task. We would have sent a engineer, right? A civil engineer, or somebody. God sent a cupbearer to accomplish this great work. He gets the right people in the right places because he knows. When you have the right people in the right places, great things happen. Read on with me in verse 21. So we carried on the work with half of them holding spears from dawn until the stars appeared. At that time I also said to the people, let each man with his servant spend the night within Jerusalem, so that they may be a guard for us by night and a laborer by day. So neither I, nor my brothers, nor my servants, nor the men of the guard who followed me, none of us removed our clothes. Each took his weapon, even to the water. They didn't even do their laundry. So we stayed ready the whole time. We stayed focused on the task. We got the task done. Right people in the right places makes a big difference. Great leaders like Nehemiah set an example in work ethic. Nehemiah helped build the wall. He says, I was doing it. He was right in there with it. That's what great leaders do. We need to be Christ-like leaders, not like leaders of the world. Leaders of the world point and tell, go do that. Jesus didn't do that, did he? Jesus got down and he washed the disciples' feet. That's a leader. Leaders set the example in work ethic. They set the example with their pace. Encouragers, we need them, not discouragers. We'll face both, though, and so it's important to be ready for both. We're going to talk more tonight. I want to go on to chapter 5, and I want to share some things with you about how do we deal with situations. There was a situation that came up. One of the reasons that Nehemiah was there was not just to rebuild the wall. Do you know why the wall was destroyed? Why did the Babylonians come in and conquer the Jews in the first place in 586 BC? Because the Jews turned away from God. That's why. God warned them, if you turn away from me, I will withdraw my protection from you and other nations will have you. So if he rebuilds the wall, but he doesn't restore the spirit of the people and their beliefs and their religion, rebuilding the wall is all for naught. So there's other things that he has to accomplish while he's there, and we're going to read about that in chapter 5. I would talk about that now, but I'm hungry. And right over here in the annex, there is some good food, and I hope everybody that's here is going to stay and eat with us. We're going to offer a song of invitation, as we always do, because there's things on our heart, and I don't know what's happened this week in your life. Maybe you're needing some prayers. This is a great opportunity to do that. And it doesn't matter if you're visiting with us. Don't feel like you can't do this. This isn't just for the members. It's for anybody. If you just want prayers, all you have to do is just come up to the front. I'll meet you up here as we're singing the song. We'll all be standing. Just come on up. I'll ask what you want. We'll pray for you. We love to pray. And we'll pray for you all week, not just today. So if that's your desire, please come as we stand and sing. Hello, I'm Curtis Hartshorn, minister at the Lake Road Church of Christ in Gore, Oklahoma. So glad that you took the time to hear this message from God's Word, and really pray it will enrich your faith. Now, if there's anything we can do for you, if you have any questions about the Bible or the Lord's Church, feel free to email me at the address at the bottom of the screen, or stop by and visit anytime, 2080 North Main Street in Gore, Oklahoma. May God richly bless you as you strive to know Him more deeply.